The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building ever made by any species in the known universe. Its walls were made of living crystal that glowed with soft light. Its ceiling stretched so high that clouds formed inside it. Representatives from 400 different alien species sat in floating chairs arranged in a perfect circle, and at the center of that circle stood the human delegation. Ambassador Elena Vasquez was 52 years old. She had gray hair, tired eyes, and a straight back that refused to bend even now. Behind her stood her team of 7 diplomats, all of them wearing the simple blue uniforms of Earth's diplomatic service. They looked very small in that enormous room, surrounded by beings that towered over them, crawled beneath them, or floated in the air around them. High Arbiter Velthorn raised his 7-fingered hand, and the whispers that filled the hall went silent. He was tall and thin, with skin that glowed like the deep ocean. His species, the Luminari, had ruled the council for 60,000 years. They believed themselves to be the wisest beings in creation. The trial of humanity has concluded, Velthorn announced. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. The council has reviewed all evidence. We have heard all arguments. We have reached our verdict. Elena Vasquez did not move. She had known this moment was coming for 3 months, ever since the council had summoned humanity to answer for its crimes. She had argued, pleaded, and fought with every tool diplomacy offered. None of it had mattered. Humanity stands guilty of the following crimes against galactic order, the Arbiter continued. First, the unauthorized distribution of medical technology to 17 pre-contact species. Second, military intervention in the Crethali purge of the Salamani people, the Volanthi cleansing of the Morthic colonies, and the Zentari extermination campaign against the Pale Wanderers. Third, and most serious, the establishment of illegal colonies in the Dead Expanse, in direct violation of Council Mandate 773. The Crethali ambassador made a clicking sound that passed for laughter among his insect-like people. The Volanthi representative, a serpent being with scales that shifted colors, hissed with pleasure. All around the hall, humanity's accusers celebrated their victory. Does the human delegation wish to speak before sentencing? Velthorn asked. Elena Vasquez stepped forward. Her footsteps echoed in the sudden silence. Yes, she said. I do. She turned slowly, looking at the assembled representatives. 400 species. 400 civilizations that had traveled between the stars while humanity was still learning to make fire. They looked down at her with contempt, with amusement, with cold indifference. You call our actions crimes, Elena said. Let me tell you what we did. We gave medicine to dying children on worlds you had decided were not ready for contact. We watched those children recover. We watched their parents weep with joy. That was our first crime. She paused, letting her words settle. Our second crime was refusing to stand by while entire species were murdered. The Salamani were a peaceful people. The Crethali killed them because they wanted their planet. We stopped that killing. The Morthic colonists were refugees fleeing a dying world. The Volanthi burned them because they considered them impure. We stopped that burning. The Pale Wanderers had done nothing to anyone. The Zentari hunted them for sport. We stopped that hunt. The Crethali ambassador rose from his floating chair, his mandibles clicking with rage. You had no right. Those were internal matters. The council had not authorized intervention. Children were dying, Elena replied calmly. We did not wait for your permission to save them. The hall erupted in angry voices. Velthorn raised his hand again, and slowly the noise faded. And your third crime? The Arbiter asked. The colonies in the Dead Expanse? Elena nodded. 2 million people, families, children, farmers and teachers and doctors. They volunteered to build new homes in a region of space that your council declared uninhabitable. When you ordered us to abandon them, To leave them to die in the void, we refused. The dead expanse is forbidden for a reason, Valthorin said. The gravitational anomalies, the radiation storms, the dying stars. Nothing survives there. By sending your people into that region, you condemn them to death. They chose to go, Elena said. They knew the risks. And they are still alive, High Arbiter. Every single one of them. Humanity does not abandon its own. The chamber fell silent. Valthorin's glowing skin pulsed with complex patterns that Elena could not read. Your defense is noted, the Arbiter said finally. It changes nothing. The Council's verdict stands. Humanity is hereby banished from all galactic space. You have one solar cycle to withdraw your ships, your stations, and your people beyond the rim. Any human vessel found within Council territory after this period will be destroyed without warning or mercy. Elena had expected this. She had prepared for this. But hearing the words still felt like a knife in her heart. You are making a mistake, she said quietly. The galaxy has existed for 3 million years without humanity, Valthorin replied. It will continue to exist without you. Your species is young, Ambassador. You have been part of the galactic community for only 83 years. In that time, you have caused more disruption than any species in recorded history. You act without permission. You believe your morality is superior to our laws. You refuse to accept your place in the natural order. He leaned forward, and his bioluminescent skin flared bright blue. The Council has tolerated your interference long enough. Now you will learn the consequences of your arrogance. Go to your dead expanse, humans. Go to the grave you have chosen for yourselves. And trouble us no more. Elena Vasquez looked at the High Arbiter for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who knew something that no one else in the room understood. We will go, she said. And we will remember this day. Every human child born from this moment forward will learn the names of every species that voted for our banishment. They will learn what the Galactic Council did to us. And one day, High Arbiter, you will need our help. When that day comes, I hope you remember this moment as clearly as we will. She turned and walked toward the exit, her team following behind her. The alien representatives watched in silence, some confused by her words, others amused by what they saw as empty threats. Only the Marani, the ancient stone-skinned beings who sat in the darkest corner of the chamber, showed any reaction. They had not spoken in council for 10,000 years. They had not voted on any matter in living memory. But as the human delegation passed their section, the eldest Marani raised one massive hand in a gesture that no one else recognized. It was a salute. Elena Vasquez saw it. She nodded once in return. Then she walked out of the Great Hall, out of galactic civilization, and into exile. Behind her, the Council celebrated its victory. They believed they had solved the human problem forever. They believed humanity would die in the darkness beyond the rim, forgotten and alone. They were wrong. The dead expanse stretched before them like an ocean of darkness. 300 light years of twisted space, dying stars, and radiation that could kill an unprotected human in seconds. The Galactic Council had sent exiles here for millions of years. None had ever returned. Admiral Chun Wei-Lin stood on the bridge of the colony ship Eternal Hope and stared at the viewscreen. Behind her, 47 other ships waited for her command. 2 million people, everything humanity had managed to save from Council space, trusted her to lead them into that darkness. Admiral, her navigation officer said, his voice tight with fear, our sensors cannot predict the gravitational anomalies. They shift constantly. If we enter without proper data, we could lose half the fleet in the first hour. Chun nodded slowly. She had studied the dead expanse for months. She knew its dangers better than anyone. The Council believed these dangers made the region uninhabitable. The Council was wrong. "Begin recording all sensor data," she ordered. "Every fluctuation, every radiation spike, every gravitational shift. We will build our own maps. We will learn how this space works. And we will survive." The fleet entered the dead expanse on the first day of humanity's exile. By the end of the first week, they had lost 3 ships to unexpected gravity wells. By the end of the first month, 17 ships had been destroyed. Thousands of people died in those early days. Their vessels crushed or torn apart by forces they could not predict. But humanity did not stop. Humanity adapted. Dr. Amara Okonkwo worked in a laboratory aboard the medical ship Healing Hand. She had been a geneticist on Earth, one of the best in her field. Now, she faced a problem that no scientist had ever solved: how to protect human bodies from radiation, levels that should have been instantly fatal. She worked for 3 years. She failed hundreds of times. She watched patients die from radiation sickness while she searched for answers. But she did not give up. On the 1204th day of exile, Dr. Okonkwo made her breakthrough. She developed a genetic modification that changed how human cells repaired themselves. Modified humans could survive radiation levels 10 times higher than normal. More than that, the modification could be passed to children, becoming a permanent part of human DNA. The first generation of modified humans called themselves the Adapted. They volunteered for the most dangerous work, exploring regions of space that would kill their unmodified brothers and sisters. They built stations in places where no life should have been possible. They became the pioneers of humanity's new home. Admiral Chun Wei-Lin faced her own challenges. The gravitational anomalies that made the dead expanse so dangerous followed patterns, but those patterns were incredibly complex. Normal navigation computers could not predict them. Normal human minds could not understand them. So, Chun stopped thinking like a normal human. She spent 5 years studying the anomalies, recording data from thousands of different locations, looking for connections that others missed. She stopped sleeping more than 2 hours a night. She covered the walls of her quarters with equations and star charts. Her officers worried that she was losing her mind. Then, on a quiet evening in the 6th year of exile, Chun finally understood. The anomalies were not random. They were music. The entire dead expanse vibrated like a vast instrument, and the gravitational shifts were notes in a song that had been playing for billions of years. Once she understood the music, she could predict the changes. Her navigation protocols became the foundation of all travel in the expanse. Ships that followed her method survived. The death rate dropped from 30% to less than 2% by the 10th year of exile. Humanity had established 17 permanent settlements across the dead expanse. By the 20th year, those settlements had grown into cities. By the 30th year, the cities had become nations, connected by trade routes that Chun's navigation methods had made safe. But survival was not enough. Humanity had always reached for more. The resources of the dead expanse were unlike anything in Council space. Strange materials formed in the radiation storms, exotic matter that existed under conditions that should have been impossible. Human scientists studied these materials obsessively. They discovered that some of them could bend space itself, folding the fabric of reality like paper. Dr. Yuki Tanaka led the team that built humanity's first fold space engine. She was 70 years old when she finally succeeded, having devoted her entire life to a technology that most scientists said was impossible. Her test ship vanished from one location and appeared instantly at another, 3 light-years away. The Council species traveled between stars using jump gates, massive structures that took centuries to build. Humanity had just made those gates obsolete. Within 10 years of Tanaka's breakthrough, every human ship carried a full space engine. Humanity could go anywhere in the galaxy in moments. The distance that had once separated them from Council space meant nothing. Human weapons technology advanced just as quickly. The radiation storms of the dead expanse had forced humanity to develop new kinds of shields and armor. Human engineers discovered ways to make weapons that existed in multiple dimensions at once, striking from angles that traditional defenses could not block. Human computer science evolved beyond anything the galaxy had seen. The artificial intelligences humanity created thought in ways no one had imagined possible. They became partners rather than tools, working alongside human scientists to solve problems that neither could solve alone. And humanity itself changed. The genetic modifications that Dr. Okonkwo had developed were just the beginning. Over decades, humans became stronger, faster, and longer-lived. They developed new senses that could detect radiation and gravity fluctuations. They learned to survive in environments that would kill any other species instantly. 60 years after their banishment, humans were no longer quite human. They had become something new, something better. Traders from Council space sometimes ventured near the edges of the expanse. They reported strange things. Ships that appeared from nowhere and vanished just as quickly. Beings that looked human but moved wrong, thought wrong, survived things that should have killed them. Some traders returned with tales of ghost fleets and phantom stations. Others did not return at all. The Galactic Council dismissed these reports as superstition. The humans were exiles, trapped in a dead region of space, slowly dying out. There was nothing to fear. The Council species had forgotten something important about humanity. They had forgotten that humans did not accept limits. They did not surrender to impossible odds. They did not go quietly into the darkness. Humans fought. Humans adapted. Humans survived. And in the dead expanse, far from the eyes of their former rulers, humanity was building something magnificent. They called it the Continuity, a government dedicated to one simple principle. No human would ever be abandoned again. No one would ever be left behind. No child would ever be sacrificed to politics or procedure. Ambassador Elena Vasquez, preserved by the same genetic modifications that had saved her species, watched from her office as the continuity grew. She had promised the Council that humanity would remember. She had promised them that one day they would need human help. That day was coming. She could feel it approaching like a storm on the horizon. And when it arrived, humanity would be ready. Admiral Chen Wei-lin watched the battle from the bridge of her flagship, the Unbroken Spirit. Around her, holographic displays showed the positions of every ship in the continuity fleet. In front of her, through the massive viewing window, she could see the Devour swarm. It looked like a cloud of darkness eating the stars. Trillions of individual units, each one a small machine designed to break apart matter and convert it into copies of itself. The swarm stretched across light years of space, moving toward a cluster of inhabited worlds that held 8 billion people. The Council's military experts said it was impossible to stop. They said no weapon could destroy enough units fast enough. They said the swarm would simply absorb any attack and grow stronger. The Council's experts were about to learn how wrong they were. All ships, engage primary weapons. Chan ordered. The continuity fleet opened fire. But these were not the weapons the Council had used. These were not missiles or energy beams or kinetic projectiles. These were something entirely new. The weapons worked by rewriting reality itself. They created small bubbles where the fundamental laws of physics changed. Inside those bubbles, the forces that held matter together simply stopped working. The Devour units, which depended on those forces to exist, fell apart instantly. The first volley destroyed approximately 100 million Devourer units. The second volley destroyed another 100 million. The third, fourth, and fifth volleys followed in rapid succession, each one wiping out more of the swarm than the entire Council fleet had managed to destroy. Before its defeat, the Devourers did what they always did when faced with resistance. They adapted. They changed their structure to resist the reality-altering weapons. They sent waves of units toward the continuity ships, trying to overwhelm them through sheer numbers. But humanity had expected this. The continuity ships existed partially outside of normal space. They occupied a strange dimension that humanity had discovered in the dead expanse, a place where the Devourers could not reach them. The swarm's attacks passed through the human ships like shadows through water. Chun smiled. It was not a kind smile. "Begin Phase 2, she ordered. Across the galaxy, human ground forces landed on worlds that were about to be consumed. They evacuated civilians, millions at a time, moving them through fold space portals to safe locations far from the swarm. Human soldiers held defensive lines against Devourer advance units while the evacuations continued. The soldiers of the continuity were not quite human anymore. Genetic modifications made them faster and stronger than any unmodified being. Neural implants connected them to tactical networks that processed information faster than thought. Their armor existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them nearly impossible to kill. On the world of Kethra Prime, a human squad of 12 soldiers held off a Devourer assault force of approximately 3 million units for 6 hours, while evacuation ships rescued the planet's entire population. When the last civilian was safe, the soldiers activated their extraction beacons and vanished, leaving the Devourers with nothing but empty cities. Similar scenes played out on hundreds of worlds. The Devourers consumed only abandoned shells, while the people who had lived in them escaped to human protection. But not all the galaxies. Inhabitants welcomed humanity's help. The Krethali had voted enthusiastically for human banishment. They had mocked the human delegation as they left the council chamber. They had celebrated humanity's exile as a victory for proper galactic order. Now they faced a choice: accept human protection or face the Devourers alone. The Krethali chose pride. They launched an attack against a human supply convoy, believing that if they could capture human technology, they could save themselves without accepting human authority. It was a foolish plan, born of desperation and arrogance. The convoy's escort fleet responded with overwhelming force. In 17 minutes, the Krethali attack group was disabled, every ship intact but unable to move or fight. Then, instead of destroying the helpless vessels, the human ships transmitted a message. Your attack has failed. Your ships are disabled. You cannot escape. In approximately 4 hours, the Devourer swarm will reach your position. You will be consumed unless we help you. Do you accept our offer of assistance? The Krethali commander considered his options. He thought about everything his people had done to humanity. He imagined the revenge the humans must want to take. Then he thought about his crew, the young officers who had followed his orders, who would die because of his pride. We accept, he said. Human rescue ships arrived within minutes. The Krethali crews were evacuated. Their vessels were towed to safety. Not a single Krethali died. The Krethali commander was taken to meet Ambassador Vasquez. He expected punishment. He expected humiliation. He expected to be made an example of human power. Instead, Elena Vasquez offered him a cup of tea and asked if his people needed anything. I do not understand, the commander said. We attacked you. We tried to steal from you. We voted for your banishment 60 years ago. Why are you showing us kindness? Elena sipped her tea calmly. Because kindness is not a reward for good behavior. It is a principle we apply to everyone, regardless of what they have done. We did not save you because you deserved it. We saved you because saving people is what we do." She set down her cup and looked at him with eyes that had seen 60 years of exile. 60 years of struggle, 60 years of building something from nothing. The Galactic Council banished us for that principle. They said we were dangerous because we refused to let innocents die while we had the power to help. They were right. We were dangerous to them, to their system, to their belief that some lives matter more than others. She leaned forward. That system is ending. The war against the Devourers is just the beginning. When the swarm is defeated, the continuity will build something new. A galaxy where no one is left to die because they are not important enough. A civilization where the strong protect the weak, where the old guide the young, where every life has value. "And if we refuse to join?" the commander asked. "Then you will be free to go," Elena replied. "We do not force anyone to accept our help. But think carefully about what you are choosing. Look at what your old system produced. Look at the galaxy that exiled us for saving lives. Is that really what you want to return to?" The commander had no answer. Similar conversations happened throughout the galaxy as the war against the Devourers continued. Species that had opposed humanity found themselves facing the same choice: accept a new order based on principles they had once rejected, or return to a system that had nearly destroyed them all. Most chose to join the continuity. Some did it gratefully, relieved to finally live under a government that valued all life equally. Others did it reluctantly, unable to deny that human leadership had saved them when their own systems had failed. A few refused. They were allowed to leave, to find their own way in the galaxy, to rebuild their civilizations according to their own principles. The continuity did not punish them. It simply let them go. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin pushed the Devourers back, system by system, sector by sector. Her fleet dismantled the swarm with methodical precision, destroying trillions of units while protecting billions of civilians. The war that Council experts had said was hopeless was being won. But Chen knew the real victory was not measured in destroyed Devourers or liberated worlds. The real victory was measured in something more fundamental. In council chambers across the galaxy, representatives of dozens of species gathered to discuss the future. They argued about principles. They debated policies. They disagreed, sometimes violently. But they all agreed on one thing: no one would ever be banished again. No one would ever be left to die because saving them was politically inconvenient. No species would ever face what humanity had faced. The principles that had condemned humanity to exile had become the foundation of a new civilization. And somewhere in the dead expanse, in a small office on a space station that had once been humanity's last hope, Ambassador Elena Vasquez smiled. The reckoning she had promised was almost complete. The Devourers came from the space between galaxies, from the vast emptiness where no star had ever burned. They were not alive in any way that Council scientists understood. They were machines, ancient beyond imagination, built by a civilization that had died before the Milky Way formed. Their purpose was simple: consume everything, convert all matter into more of themselves, spread to new galaxies and repeat the process forever. They had destroyed 1,000 galaxies already. They had never been stopped. The first Council world to fall was a small mining colony on the outer edge of the galaxy. One moment, it existed. The next moment, sensors showed only dust where the planet had been. The Devourers had broken it apart and absorbed it in less than 3 hours. 12 more worlds fell in the first week. Then 30. Then 100. The Galactic Council declared a state of emergency. All conflicts between member species were suspended. All military resources were combined into a single fleet under the command of Grand Admiral Velthorin the Younger, son of the High Arbiter who had banished humanity 6 decades earlier. 40 million warships gathered at the Carthex Nebula, the largest military force in galactic history. Ships from 400 different species flew in formation, their weapons charged, their crews determined to defend their homes. The Devourer swarm that met them contained approximately 2 trillion individual units. Grand Admiral Velthorin ordered the attack at noon Galactic Standard Time. By 12 minutes past noon, his flagship had been destroyed. By 15 minutes past noon, half the fleet was gone. By 23 minutes past noon, the battle was over. 38 million ships, billions of crew members, the combined military strength of 400 civilizations. All of it destroyed in less than half an hour. The survivors fled in every direction, carrying word of the disaster back to their homeworlds. Panic spread across the galaxy. Species that had ruled the stars for millions of years suddenly faced extinction. There was nowhere to run. There was nothing that could stop the Devourers. High Arbiter Velthorin, now ancient and weak, convened an emergency council session. The great hall that had once held 400 confident delegations now held terrified survivors. Some species had already been completely destroyed. Others had only days before the swarm reached their homeworlds. "We have no options," the Crithily ambassador said, his clicking voice filled with despair. "Our weapons cannot harm them. Our shields cannot stop them. We cannot run fast enough. We cannot hide deep enough. This is the end of all things." The Volanthi representative coiled her serpentine body tightly, her scales dull with fear. "Perhaps we can negotiate. Offer them something they want." "They want everything," a Zentari delegate replied. "They want all matter in the universe. There is nothing we can offer that they would not simply take." The chamber fell into hopeless silence. Ancient civilizations that had believed themselves eternal now faced their final moments. Some delegates wept. Others prayed to gods they had not believed in for centuries. Many simply sat in stunned silence, unable to accept what was happening. High Arbiter Velthorin rose slowly from his chair. He was 200 years old, kept alive by technology that was failing. He had ruled the council for most of that time. He had believed himself wise. He had believed the council's decisions were always correct. Now he knew better. "There is one option we have not considered," he said quietly. The chamber looked at him with desperate hope. "We must contact the humans." Silence. Then an explosion of voices, some outraged, some terrified, some simply confused. "The humans are dead," the Crethily ambassador shouted. "They died in the expanse decades ago." "They are not dead," Velthorin replied. "Our scouts have seen them. Ships that fold space. Technology we cannot understand. They survived. They may have even thrived. Then they will want revenge," the Volanthi hissed. "We banished them to die. Why would they help us now?" Velthorin closed his glowing eyes. "Because it is who they are. We punished them for saving others without permission. We exiled them for refusing to let innocent people die. If any species in the galaxy would help us despite what we did to them, it is humanity." He opened his eyes and looked around the chamber. "I will send the message myself. If they answer, perhaps we have hope. If they do not, we have lost nothing, because we have nothing left to lose." The message was sent that same day, broadcast on every frequency the council could reach. It was simple and direct, to the human continuity. "This is High Arbiter Velthorin of the Galactic Council. We are facing extinction. We are asking for your help. We know we do not deserve it. We are asking anyway." The council waited. Hours passed. Then days. Hope began to fade. On the 7th day, something appeared in orbit above the council homeworld. It was a single ship, small and elegant, made of materials that Council scanners could not identify. It had not used a jump gate. It had not traveled through normal space. One moment there was nothing, and the next moment it was simply there. The ship landed in the plaza before the Council chambers, in the exact spot where the human delegation had stood 60 years earlier. Its door opened and a single figure stepped out. Ambassador Elena Vasquez had not aged a day since her banishment. Her hair was still gray. Her eyes were still tired. Her back was still straight. She walked across the plaza with the same calm dignity she had shown on the day of her exile, and the Council members who had gathered to meet her stepped back in something like fear. High Arbiter Veltharin approached her slowly. His body was failing. His light was fading. But he made himself stand tall as he faced the woman he had condemned to death. "You came," he said. "We came," Elena replied. "You received our message?" "We received it. We also received every other message your species has sent in the past 60 years. We have been listening to everything. We know about the Devourers. We know about your defeat. We know that without help, your galaxy will be dead within 3 months." Velthorn's light flickered. "Can you stop them?" Elena smiled. It was the same smile she had shown on the day of her banishment, the smile of someone who knew something no one else understood. "Yes, we have been studying the Devourers for over a decade. We know how they function. We know their weaknesses. We have developed weapons that can destroy them. The human continuity is prepared to save this galaxy." Hope blazed in Velthorn's fading light. "Then you will help us? Despite everything?" "We will help the innocent," Elena said. "We will save the children who had no part in our banishment. We will protect the species who never wished us harm. We will fight for the galaxy we were exiled from." She stepped closer to the High Arbiter, and her voice grew hard. "But the Galactic Council as it currently exists will end. The system that allowed our banishment, that permitted genocide when it was politically convenient, that measured the worth of a species by how old they were and how much power they held, that system is finished. In its place, the continuity will establish a new order." Velthorn trembled. "What kind of order?" "One based on the principles we were exiled for. Protection of the innocent. Intervention against genocide. Value for every life, regardless of species or age or power. The strong will protect the weak, not exploit them. The old will guide the young, not dominate them. And no species will ever be banished again." She looked around at the assembled council members, meeting their eyes one by one. "You have a choice. Accept these terms and live under human protection. Reject them and face the Devourers alone. But choose quickly, High Arbiter. The swarm is already approaching your border worlds. You have perhaps 10 days before they reach this planet." Velthorn looked at the woman he had once condemned to death. He thought about pride. He thought about the Council's ancient traditions. He thought about the millions of years of galactic civilization that would end if he refused. Then he thought about the children who would die if he let pride make this decision. He bowed his head. "We accept." Elena Vasquez nodded once. Then she raised her hand to her ear and spoke into a communicator the Council could not see. "Admiral Chun, begin the liberation." 1,000 light years away, the human continuity's war fleet began to move. 10,000 ships folded space simultaneously, appearing throughout the galaxy in a wave of displaced reality. The war for galactic survival had begun. 300 years had passed since the day humanity was banished from the Galactic Council. The Council no longer existed. In its place stood the Universal Assembly, a government that represented every known species in the galaxy. Its capital was a world called New Hope, a planet that had been dead rock when humanity first arrived and was now covered in gardens. forests, and cities designed to accommodate beings of every shape and size. Admiral Chen Weilin stood at a window in the Assembly's central tower, looking out at the city below. Her consciousness now existed across a network of quantum computers spanning 300 light years. Her physical body was a construct, a shell that allowed her to interact with people who still existed in normal space. She had not been fully human for 2 centuries, but she had never stopped feeling human. Beside her stood Ambassador Elena Vasquez. Like Chen, she had been transformed by the technologies humanity developed in the Dead Expanse. Her body had not aged since the day of banishment. Her mind held memories of 300 years, preserved perfectly by modifications that humanity's scientists continued to improve. They were waiting for the anniversary ceremony to begin. "I still remember standing in the council chamber," Elena said quietly. "All those alien faces looking down at us. All that contempt. They were so certain we would die in the darkness." Chen nodded. "I remember the first year in the Expanse. We lost so many ships. So many people. There were days I thought we would not survive. But we did. Yes, we did. Below them, the streets of New Hope filled with people. Not just humans, but members of hundreds of different species, walking together, talking together, living together. Children of every shape played in parks designed for beings that flew, crawled, walked, and swam. Markets sold goods from every corner of the galaxy. Music from 1,000 different cultures blended into something new and beautiful. This was what humanity had built. Not an empire of conquest, but a civilization of connection. Not dominance through force, but leadership through example. The ceremony began with a moment of silence for the humans who had died in the Expanse. Their names scrolled across screens throughout the assembly building. Thousands of names, each one representing a person who had given their life so that humanity could survive. The silence stretched for several minutes, a small acknowledgement of an enormous sacrifice. Then Admiral Chen walked to the podium at the center of the assembly chamber. Representatives of 500 species filled the seats around her, more than had ever been part of the old council. Many of them were species that the council had never contacted, civilizations that humanity had found and welcomed after the war against the Devourers. 300 years ago, Chen began, the Galactic Council decided that humanity was too dangerous to be allowed in civilized space. They said we acted without permission. They said we believed our morality was superior to their laws. They said we refused to accept our place in the natural order. She paused, looking around at the assembled representatives. They were right about all of it. We did act without permission, because innocent people were dying while the council debated procedure. We did believe our morality was superior to their laws, because their laws allowed genocide when it was politically convenient. We refused to accept our place in the natural order, because that natural order treated some lives as more valuable than others. A voice echoed through the silent chamber. The council sent us to die in the Dead Expanse. They believed they were punishing us for our arrogance. Instead, they gave us something precious, the freedom to build a civilization based on our principles. Without compromise, without permission, without apology. She gestured at the world visible through the chamber's great windows. This is what we built. A galaxy where no species is banished. Where intervention and genocide is not merely permitted, but required. Where the strong protect the weak, and the old guide the young. And every life has value regardless of where it was born or how long its species has existed. She turned back to the assembly. Some of you remember the old system. Some of you remember what it was like to live under a government that measured your worth by your power. I ask you, is this better? Is this galaxy, where your children can play with children of other species without fear? Where your people can travel anywhere without being turned away? where your civilization is protected no matter how young or small it might be. Is this not better than what came before? The chamber erupted in agreement. Species that had once fought wars against each other now stood together, united by principles that humanity had refused to abandon even in exile. Ambassador Vasquez took her place at the podium. 300 years ago, I told the High Arbiter of the Galactic Council that one day they would need our help. I told him to remember the moment of our banishment. I told him that every human child born from that moment forward would learn what had been done to us. She smiled. It was the same smile she had worn on the day of exile, the smile of someone who knew something no one else understood. But now everyone understood. The High Arbiter did not live to see this day. His species nearly went extinct during the Devour War. We saved them anyway, because saving people is what we do. His descendants now sit in this assembly as equal partners in a civilization that has grown beyond anything the old council could have imagined. She looked up at the great dome above the chamber, through which the stars of the galaxy were visible. We were banished because we refused to let others suffer while we had the power to help. They thought they were punishing us. They thought we would die in the dark, forgotten and alone. Instead, we built a home large enough for everyone. The ceremony continued with speeches from representatives of other species, each one telling their own story of how humanity's principles had changed their lives. The Marani, who had saluted Elena on the day of banishment, spoke for the first time in the assembly, their ancient voices describing 10,000 years of watching the council fail and finally seeing something better rise. Former enemies stood and admitted their mistakes. Survivors of genocide thanked humanity for interventions that the old council would have forbidden. Young species that had only joined the galaxy recently expressed amazement that such a civilization could exist. When the ceremony ended, Elena and Chun walked together through the streets of New Hope. Around them, the celebration continued, a galaxy expressing gratitude for its salvation and hope for its future. "Do you ever regret it?" Chun asked. "The path we chose?" Elena shook her head. "Not for a moment. We could have surrendered. We could have accepted the council's judgment and died in the expanse like they expected. Instead, we became something they never imagined possible." She stopped at a small park where children of a dozen species were playing a game together, their laughter mixing in the warm air. "Look at them," she said. "They have no idea that their species once tried to destroy each other. They do not know about the wars, the genocides, the banishments. They only know that they are safe, that they are valued, that they belong here." Chun watched the children for a long moment. "That is what we fought for," she said. "Not dominance, not revenge, just this. A galaxy where children can play together without fear." Elena nodded. "Universal dominance. That is what the old council would call it. They would say we have conquered the galaxy, imposed our will on every species. They would not understand that what we have done is far more profound." She turned to Chun with eyes that held 3 centuries of wisdom. "We did not conquer the galaxy. We convinced it that our way was better. We showed every species what was possible when you refused to abandon your principles. We proved that compassion is not weakness, that protecting the innocent is not interference, that caring about others is not a crime. And the universe changed," Chun said. "And the universe changed." They walked on through the celebration, 2 ancient warriors who had fought for something greater than victory, something more lasting than empire. Around them, the galaxy they had saved continued its daily life. Millions of species living in peace under principles that humanity had refused to surrender. High above the planet, the stars burned cold and eternal. The devourers were gone. The old council was a memory. The dead expanse had become the birthplace of a new civilization. And humanity, the species that had been banished to die in the darkness, now stood at the center of a universe transformed by their example. Not conquerors, not rulers, not masters, just people who had refused to let others suffer. That was humanity's true dominance, not the ships or the weapons or the technologies that had saved the galaxy. It was the simple, stubborn belief that every life mattered. The Council had tried to destroy that belief. They had failed. The universe was better for it.